Chautauqua is made possible by the Maryland Humanities Council, Montgomery College, and the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Welcome. You've just tuned to a program called Chautauqua, where scholar actors dress up in full costume to portray famous people in history. I'm Angela Rice Beemer here at the Germantown campus of Montgomery College, and this year's theme is the War of 1812 in Maryland. Tonight's Chautauqua character was a widow and businesswoman who made the garrison flag that flew over Fort McHenry during the battle that inspired our national anthem. Tonight's Chautauqua character is Mary Pickersgill.
Oh my goodness. Excuse me one moment. The house has been in such disarray. I must tell you, these past few weeks have been quite bothersome. What with the burning of Washington, I'm sure you've seen that. My neighbor allowed us to crawl on top of his roof. That was a very frightening time. And we saw the glow of the burning of our capital city. And that was in August. It was rather frightening. It was almost as if a pall had come and settled itself across the city of Baltimore. Our safety committee had called up the militia. Why, they had been digging ditches from the harbor all the way up to Hampstead Hill so that they might prepare themselves for whichever way the British had decided to come. The hill was full of men and cannon. I do know that, of course, that the fort was quite ready. Well, in fact, I had been asked to make a very large flag for that fort, and I am quite proud that I was able to do so. I understand, though, that you are here to discuss my flag, so I suppose I should really start with my mother. Mother actually said, "Idle hands are the devil's playground," so if you don't mind, I will continue this flag that I am starting for Mr. Richard Caton. I'm not very fond of the fabric. I think it's too silky. But Mr. Caton is a very good customer, and I will endeavor to persevere, as Mother says. My mother, Rebecca Flower Young, was the wife of William Young, a goldsmith, and they had 5 children. There was William and John, Hannah, Benjamin, and myself. We had 3 others that were born to the family that sadly did not make it out of their infancy. But we were quite a good family. Mother said I was born in a very auspicious year, on the 12th of February, 1776. I do believe that is the year we sent the letter to His Majesty George III, telling him that he is not a very good king and that we are going to be our own country. Thank you very much. My father joined General Washington's army and was a captain. My uncle, Colonel Benjamin Flower, was actually Commissary General of Philadelphia, and he was in charge of all the military stores. I do not remember much, but my elder brothers do tell me that in the fall of 1777, they packed up all of our precious belongings into an ox cart and followed a baggage train all the way to Lebanon, Pennsylvania, with myself perched on top. I was but an infant of 1 or so. I don't remember it. But William said it was quite an adventure. Why, in fact, this is impossible. In fact, he and my brother John insisted that they were going to be members of General Washington's army. And as they were walking to Lebanon, they would play their drums or they would fire their rifles. My sister Hannah, of course, was only 10. And she was quite taken aback by that. She did not think that they should be bothering the soldiers. And I had a younger brother, Benjamin, who wanted so much to be like his older brothers. So they used him as the aide-de-camp. You see, my brother William was General Washington. My brother John was the Marquis or the General Lafayette. And brother Benjamin was the aide-de-camp. And Washington would stand at the edge of our cart at night. They had gotten into the flour as well. So they had powdered their hair with flour without telling Mother. And they would stand there. Well, General Lafayette, look at all these wonderful troops that we have. Thank you so much for coming to help us. And my brother John would say, oh, you're so welcome, Monsieur the General. He tried very hard to do a French accent. It wasn't very good. And little brother Benjamin, what shall I do? Be quiet. We did reach Lebanon. Father was stationed at the camp in Allentown. Well, I do believe also that that is where they brought the bells and the chimes from the city of Philadelphia. And they were hidden. The great state bell from the Pennsylvania State House was hidden in the basement of the Zion Church in Allentown. And the others were hidden as well so that the British would not capture them. All this time, Mother is making flags and raising the 5 of us. She is also assisting the other ladies in making shirts for our troops, the linings for their hats, drum case covers, musket brushes. Why, I remember when she was in Philadelphia telling me that she actually cast musket balls at the Philadelphia Naval Yards. So she was quite busy. We stayed in Lebanon, close to the camp there, between Lebanon and Allentown. And unfortunately, my father died in 1778, leaving, of course, my mother a widow with 5 children. She was not very happy living in Lebanon and did send many letters to my uncle Benjamin after he had returned to Philadelphia. Uncle Benjamin eventually did find us a home, and in 1780 we moved in with himself, his new wife, and my cousin Anne. So it was the 6 of us, the 3 of them, plus the many boarders that my mother advertised that she would care for, plus the soldiers who were coming in and out to have their shirts fitted, and the linings of their hats put in, and the young drummer boys, of course, looking for the drum case covers that Mother is very busy sewing together. Hannah was assisting. She was learning how to, the trade of sewing and such. And I helped. I did. I was 4 or 5. I got to hold the fabric. Mother was also teaching me how to thread the needle. At 5, it was sort of hard. As I got older, it became easier. But now, as I'm getting a little older, I do swear that those needle eyes are becoming smaller and smaller every year. But when we were back in Philadelphia, Mother again was making flags. In fact, she was the premier flag maker in Philadelphia, having been the only person to advertise in the Philadelphia Packet and the Inquirer. Well, I remember walking back and forth with her several times a year so that she might place different ads in the paper to acquire more customers. We were a very busy household. My sister, Hannah, eventually married. John married. Benjamin, he became a doctor. My oldest brother, William, he married as well, stayed in Philadelphia. Mother decided that she wanted to move to Baltimore, as that's where my sister, Hannah, and her husband had moved to. My brother, John, also joined us. I was 8 years old, I believe, 8 or 9, and the trip from Philadelphia to Baltimore was an adventure, simply traveling down with the carts and the horses and all the different people that we would meet along the way. It was very exciting. While we were there in Baltimore, of course, we lived a great many years. And sometime later, when I was 18, I met a lovely young gentleman. His name was John Pickersgill. Oh, he was such a wonderful man. He was partner with Cruxell, Pickersgill and Company as a merchant. Well, we did fall in love and married in October of 1795. John decided to move back to Philadelphia. Mother eventually joined us as well, and she was continuing to make flags. In fact, my brother William was also making flags and more drum case covers, musket brushes. We had those little wire brushes in the house from hither and yon, and Mother would make those as well. But always she was teaching me, Mary, you must learn to take care of yourself. She made sure that I was schooled, that I could read, that I could write, that I could do my sums. Why, Dr. Rush had opened a girls' school. It was very important to him as well. So not only was he training young girls, but he trained my brother Benjamin to be a doctor. Goodness gracious, that was quite a while ago. He's a doctor out towards Frederick now. I'm very proud of him. John and I had 4 children. Unfortunately, only one of them, Caroline, who was born in 1800, survived to her adulthood. We lost our first 3, which was quite sad to us. But I know that we'll meet them again someday. My husband eventually had found a task in London. He was going to settle claims between American citizens and the British Parliament. And that was in 1805. Well, of course, Caroline and I waited. And while we were waiting, of course, Mother was again sewing flags. And I was assisting her. My brother William was also sewing flags. I assisted him. We did keep very busy. And then I received a letter from London telling me my husband had died. And that left me a widow with but 1 child. Philadelphia was a lovely place, but I felt the call to move back to Baltimore. With the help of my brother John, we found a home on the corner of Albemarle and Pratt Street. Oh, I should not call it Pratt Street. Someone told me that eventually it will become Pratt Street. I don't think I like that name. I prefer Queen Street. That's what it is. Pratt Street is on the other side of the river. I don't know how they could possibly name it. But it was a lovely house. It had a very large room in the upstairs. We have 5 windows. 5 windows. And Mother decided that since Baltimore, being the 3rd largest city here in the United States, and being a very important naval center, a very important merchanting center, that we should continue to make flags. We advertised in the Baltimore papers. We advertised for ships and military colors. We do quite a few ship's colors. You do know those, the company flags. Mr. Caton's flag, a burgee of blue over white. Every company has a different one. I also make duplicate flags. Those go to the Naval Observatory on top of Federal Hill. And those are raised, as you know, when the flag comes, or pardon me, when the ship comes in, so that everyone in the harbor knows who is coming and who is leaving. We do signal flags. We also do flags for the militia. Sometimes we must paint those. So I let the girls dabble in that. They have a very good hand. I had acquired an apprentice about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, Grace Wisher. Her mother is a free woman, and her father is one of the sea fencibles at Fort McHenry. Well, Grace has such a fine hand, and I'm quite proud that she is my apprentice. I do wish that my daughter Caroline would learn a few things from her. Grace does not try to slide down the banister. Grace sticks to her sewing and does not go flaunting off to watch the soldiers march down Queen Street, or wonder where the militia is going, or try to sneak letters to young Benjamin Oliver. Benjamin Oliver is 16. I must talk with his father about that. But the young girls in my employ, I am very proud of and I'm very fond of as well. We do have quite a few customers. And I was not taken much aback when Commodore Barney and General Stricker did approach me one day in June. It was June of last year, 1813. They actually are cousins by marriage. Their 2 wives are married to my Uncle John's, pardon me, they're not married to my Uncle John's sister. Their 2 wives are sister to the woman that my Uncle John has married. So it's a very large family, and I have had the pleasure of entertaining these gentlemen every so often. So they are standing in my parlor. And of course, my nieces, Margaret and Eliza, and my daughter, Caroline, are looking out the window because the gentlemen did not come alone. They did come with some of their junior officers. But of course, young Grace, she is sitting in the corner and she is sewing, as is appropriate for a young girl, not staring out the windows at the soldiers who are passing by. They stood very quietly, and I knew something was afoot. We had had many, many instances of unrest in Baltimore. After the war had been declared in June of 1812, we had some terrible riots. We still have people who are calling for us to leave to stop the war, and others who are calling for the downfall of the king himself. But here, my two friends are standing, and they have asked me, Mrs. Pickersgill, we need you to make a flag for Fort McHenry. You do know that Major Armistead has everything ready. The men are ready. The guns are ready. The town is ready. But we need an ensign. And Major Armistead had stated that he wanted a flag so large the British would have no trouble seeing it from a distance. Oh, I thought perhaps, a 20-foot flag would be rather large. And then they said we need it to be 30 feet hoist and 42 feet fly. That's 30 feet tall and 42 feet in the wind. And then they were very quiet and looked down at their feet. And I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And Commodore Barney said, Mary, we need it in 6 weeks. I said yes. I don't know what overcame me. Perhaps it is the patriotic spirit that I was born with, that I have seen my mother carry so many times. But I said yes. Immediately I began to call out from all over for English wool bunting. You might find this rather ironic, but I did make what I consider the world's best flag with some of the world's finest fabric. Sadly, we here in America do not make very good, very sturdy wool bunting, so I did acquire 400 yards of fine English wool bunting from my brother-in-law, Jesse Peterson, who is married to my sister Hannah. I had had some in stock. Jesse gave me some. I was able to purchase some from a few other merchants who had in stock, and the girls and I set about sewing. But of course, we did have to have it dyed. My neighbor down the street, who was a professional dyer, used indigo for the blue and madder for the red, madder root. They were both rather expensive colors. But Major Armistead was very specific with the gentlemen, and they told me that he wanted the finest fabric, the finest color. And I felt that was the only way I could do such a flag. Mother and I had a few discussions on what type of seam we should use. I don't know if you ladies know much about the French fell seam. I don't know how many of you might have been making flags with some of the other ladies in the ladies' groups. But we use the French fell seam. It's much different than the flat fell. Of course, you do know that we are combining edges of fabric. But one line of stitching is straight, it's simply up and down, which is quite easy. The other line, which is going to be at the top when you raise the flag, is a spiral stitch or an overcast stitch, and it's a very quick stitch as well. But when you have to do 42 feet of it, and you have to do it twice per stripe, because sadly, English wool bunting only comes 18 inches wide. And Major Armistead wanted the flag to have stripes that were 2 feet wide. There's a difference between 18 and 22. And he wanted the stars to be 2 feet wide. And I decided I was not going to use bunting for the stars. That meant I would have had to piece them, which meant that it would have a weak point. I decided to use cotton. Cotton was wider, and it also had a tighter weave, because I was going to do reverse applique stars. There had to be stars on both sides, but I could not put 2 stars. That would just have too much weight. And if the flag is not going to fly, and people are sailing into Baltimore Harbor saying, oh, is that Mrs. Pickersgill's flag? It's not very good, is it? It's not flying. I don't think I'm going to ask her to make replica flags for us today. We'll try some other lady down the street. And that was not hard to do. Excuse me, actually. You simply sew it on one side, and I had the girls cut out on the inside. I let Grace do the overcast on the obverse side. Again, her hand is quite fine. I'm very proud of her work. But I could also tell that she was quite worried. She was very worried for her father. I was quite worried for my family. You see, my brother-in-law, Jesse Peterson, is captain in the militia. The husband of my neighbor up the street, Mrs. Peters, why, he is a navigator. upon one of the privateers that the British are so angry about. It took us 6 weeks to sew the flag together. We did some of the stripe piecing in the house, sitting up in my large room. The weather was very warm. It had a terrible wind come through occasionally, but again, it warmed up again. The summer of June, July, and August 1813 was very, very hot. But you're sitting there with 400 yards of fine English wool bunting, with the British at your doorstep, and you don't know if your town is going to survive. The weather is the least of your concerns. It took us 6 weeks to make this flag. As soon as I pieced the stripes together, I did realize that I did not have enough room in my home. My neighbor, Mr. Claggett, who had recently purchased the warehouse just up the street, allowed me to use his malt house floor. As they don't brew beer in the summer, it's way too warm here in the city of Baltimore. So the girls and I carried the fabric up, and we laid it down on the floor. And I began to stitch. I had a small bench, and I would simply sew up and down, and then around and around and around. Caroline said sometimes I was doing that in my sleep. I must tell you, those 6 weeks almost felt like 6 years. We were not sure when the British were coming. There were skirmishes on the coast, there were skirmishes on the eastern shore. Some of our troops, some of our militia actually marched into Canada. We were all very concerned about them. I finished the flag in August of 1813. The gentlemen picked it up, they put it into a duffel bag, and carried it back to the fort. I sent a receipt along with them for $574.44, $405.90 for the large flag, and $168 and some for the smaller flag. I did not tell you about the storm flag I had to make as well. Aside from the very large one, I had to make a storm flag, and it was only 17 by 25 feet. I had the girls do that, as I was very concerned with the large one. And they did get it done in quite a good time. I spent approximately $400 for supplies and such, but a goodly profit of $175 for 6 weeks' work is nothing to sneeze at. And I did promise Caroline and the girls that I would purchase new fabric so that they might make summer dresses for themselves. And I think I should buy Grace a pair of shoes. I think she'd be pleased with that. And we waited. We waited through the rest of the summer and the fall, and then it was winter. Come January 1814, the British still had not come. Our militia was still practicing, our men were still digging trenches. They were still building clipper ships at Fells Point. They were very busy. We were busy. We were making bandages. We were trying to save food. Things were becoming rather scarce because of the blockade across the Chesapeake. Many of our ships could slip by, but some could not. And many of them had been pressed into service by our government as protection. Why, General Stricker, no, he was a fine man. Oh, forgive me, that has gone. Our men have been very, very busy with this. We sat through the winter, we sat through the early spring, and the British still had not come. We had received, again, many stories of the treachery of the British, of the burning of Havre de Grace. I do not think the British are gentlemen, do you, if they should burn innocent homes and drive people out of their towns. And still we waited. The spring came and the summer came, and eventually in August, much of the militia had gone down to the capital, Washington, into Bladensburg. And on a very warm August night, someone mentioned, or actually yelled, that there was a fire to the south. Well, many people, myself included, climbed on top of our neighbors' roofs, and we could see a glow on the horizon. We later learned, some hours, that was Washington, our capital city. We knew that the British were on their way. The militia was called up. The fort was put into preparation. Everything, it was as if we were all holding our breath, waiting for them to come. I do not know much of what happened. I do know that there were many, many soldiers that had trailed back into Baltimore City who had joined with General Stricker's group, Commodore Barney, his flotilla, which had caused the British no end of problems. We're seeing many recruits as well. News came eventually on the 11th of September that the British had landed at North Point. There had been a battle there, and our troops had retreated. They had retreated all the way to Hampstead Hill, which I might add is a mile from my house. I could hear much of the preparations, the sounds of the guns. I saw the militia moving through the streets. Many people decided that they were going to leave. They could pack up whatever they could carry, and they left. My family and I, we did gather a few things together, but we decided not to leave as we had nowhere to go. We were simply trying to be ready. It wasn't until the 13th of September that we realized the British were most certainly on our doorstep, not only to the east at Hampstead Hill, but coming up Patapsco Harbor on their way to conquer Fort McHenry. They started their firing in the early morning of the 13th of September. There were mortar shells, there were rockets, there was noise, terrible noise, for 25 hours. Sometimes the noise, the booming was so terrible, it rocked our house, and we had to actually take the china off of the cupboard shelves so that it would not break. In fact, I must tell you again, my neighbor, Mrs. Peters up the street, she has sworn that she is going to send a bill to His Majesty George III for breaking her teacups. I hope she gets money for it. We gathered ourselves together. I had Grace return to her mother, for I knew that both ladies would be very frightened. With her father being a sea fencible at the fort, that was the first place that they would stop. They would try to overtake the fort. The guns sounded, their guns sounded, our guns answered them sometimes. In fact, I heard two of their ships tried to approach Fort McHenry and were badly used by our cannons. One so badly used that it actually had to be towed away. It went into the night and into the day. There were some moments of silence. And then they were followed once again by the booming of shells and the firing of rockets. On the morning of the 14th, it became very quiet. We heard a mortar shell explode, and then everything became very quiet. Well, we did not truly think that it was over, as there had been some lulls in the activity earlier. But as time began to tick on a little longer, we realized that perhaps the bombardment was over. And we were rather frightened. We did not know if that meant that our fort stood or that our fort had fallen. Braving whatever was to come, Mother grabbed my hand. I took Carolyn and my nieces, and we rushed down to the docks, which were only 4 blocks from my home. And we stood there, some on tiptoe. A enterprising young man actually climbed on top of one of the warehouses, and he was looking out, squinting his eyes, and then he yelled, "I can see it, I can see it!" We're saying, "What? Is it the British flag? Whose colors are standing there?" He says, "I can see that huge flag that you made, Mrs. Pickersgill. I can see it from here." Our flag was still there. I was so pleased. It meant that our fort was still standing, that our nation was still here. We learned later that the British actually had run out of ammunition, and with nothing else to do, they simply turned their ships round and sailed back down and out of the Chesapeake. Where they are from here, I could not tell you, and I do not care. I simply hope that they are gone for good, and perhaps our diplomats can talk with theirs and we can be friends. I certainly hope so. Well, that was quite a time. There was such cheering. We could hear the cheering all the way from Hampstead Hill. And they were shooting off the guns, and they were dancing in the streets. The taverns were full of young men who were very, very happy that their part in the battle was over. Later that day, actually I have a copy of it, my daughter Caroline was out with Mother, and she was handed a broadside about a poem that was written by a gentleman from Georgetown. I'm not sure why he was here in Baltimore. Apparently it had something to do with the British and a prisoner exchange. There was such talk around town. We're not very sure about it. But to think that someone was inspired by the flag that my family and I made to write a poem. It was called Defense of Fort McHenry. "Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? Whose broad stripes and bright stars," those were my broad stripes and my bright stars, "through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming." My goodness. It's humbling. It's humbling to know that there were men in our fair city, and there were men from outside the counties, outside the states, who hurried themselves to Baltimore. It is humbling to know that there were men, free men, who volunteered their very lives for a country that enslaved their brethren. It was very humbling to know that a gentleman wrote about seeing a simple thing as a flag. But it meant so much to us in the city of Baltimore. You see, if it had been the British flag flying, we don't think we'd have had a city. We think they would have put Baltimore to the torch. They certainly would have destroyed the naval shipyards. We do make some very fine ships there, so they called us the nest of pirates. But we persevered, and they left. It is a very humbling thing to know that I live in a land that people love so much, that they would lay their lives down to protect it. I am very moved, especially by this very last stanza that Mr. Key, that's his name, Mr. Key, I believe his first name was Francis. "Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. And then conquer we must, when our cause it is just. And this be our motto: in God is our trust. And the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the hope of the brave." Well, I certainly hope that the future will still contain these words, and that our country will still be the land of the free and the home of the brave. I am so proud to have done a little part, and I hope my flag inspired people, that it set them alight with patriotism, that it calmed them when they saw it flying over Fort McHenry. To be a part of this history is a marvelous thing. Well, I do have to go. I must do some marketing. We are nearly out of food, and Lucinda, my cook, insists on having a very large meal this evening. But I thank you very much for coming.
I'm here with Jill Peters, who's just completed a performance of Mary Pickersgill. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Angela.
Really enjoyed the performance.
Thank you.
The question I want to ask you is, how did you get started performing Mary Pickersgill?
Well, I was first employed at the Flag House in February of 2002. I enjoyed dressing up, and I enjoyed making my own clothing. A very dear coworker of mine, Ellie Marine, was our Mary Pickersgill for several years. I would go out on outreach programs with her. She would perform Mary, and I would do flag history. Then as she started to retire, they sort of brought me in to play Mary during Defenders Weekend in September. And I've been reenacting Mary Pickersgill off and on now since, I want to say 2005 or so.
Only at the Flag House? Or?
At the Flag House. I've done outreach programs. I am Mary at Defenders Day at Fort McHenry, which is a great deal of fun. And wherever else they'll have me.
What do you find most appealing about her character?
She seems to be very out of the ordinary. Women normally did not own businesses. They did not run their lives as much as Mary and her mother, Rebecca Young, did. And she, oh golly, seems to be a part of history at a time that was so very important to us. But people have kind of forgotten about her or don't know about her.
And the other thing, when given that very incredible deadline of 6 weeks to make that huge garrison flag, she didn't say no. She said, okay,
yes, she did.
We'll do it.
I would love to have been a fly on the wall to hear her actual response. But she was a professional flag maker. I understand she was also a very patriotic woman. And she did know Commodore Barney and General Stricker as distant family, and probably thought that this was quite an honor for her to do such.
And in getting the fabric and the implements that she needed, do you know how long it took her once she placed the order, how she got things? Because there's such a scarcity of the items that she needed.
Well, she was a professional flag maker. She would have had fabric on hand. At that time, there had been a blockade across the Chesapeake, so materials were hard to come by. I have no idea. Maybe she had it smuggled in. Maybe she had it on hand. Maybe she got it from a different port city. However it happened, she had 400 yards of fine English wool bunting to complete the flag. I'm not very sure when the order was put into Mary's hands. I do know that the flag was picked up in August of 1813, around the 18th and 19th. So if you backdate that about 6 weeks, she started in mid-June, worked through July and August to get the flag done.
In the heat of Baltimore,
yes,
in this whole area.
Yes, ma'am.
and you mentioned in your performance that she ran out of space and they had to move across the street. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Mary's upstairs room, where she probably did most of her sewing, is quite large. It is the full width of the house. It's the largest, brightest room in the house, probably where she made most of the flags. But the flag was 30 by 42 feet. And if she wanted to make sure that all of the stripes were sewn properly, all of the seams were straight, she had to have a place where she could lay it out completely, about the size of this gymnasium here. The brewery, or the warehouse just up the street, was just across Granby Street, where the new Marriott Hotel I think it is where that's standing, had just been rebuilt. It was owned by her neighbor, Mr. Claggett. He let her use the malt house floor, and there she sat and sewed flag.
Wow. It's really kind of an incredible feat. Do you know if she'd ever had anything that large to make before?
I don't believe so. I think that's the largest flag Mary had ever made at the time. And actually, at that time, it was the largest flag ever to fly from a flagpole. So at that time period, if there had been a Guinness Book of World Records, she'd have been in it.
And everyone would have known her name.
Would have remembered her name.
Rather than now. Do you know if she ever met Francis Scott Key?
I don't believe she did. I truly don't. I think Mr. Key, once he was finished with his job of rescuing his friend Dr. Beans, talking to his brother-in-law, the judge, having the broadside printed up, his brother-in-law did that actually, he probably traveled back to his family in Georgetown. I doubt they met.
Did you ever hear anything about her feelings about the British?
No, but one can kind of understand. Her father was a captain in the Continental Army. Her mother is making flags for General Washington. She's making musket balls for the Continental Army. Actually, the British stole the family silver in the 1700s and almost destroyed the family Bible. So I don't think she has that good of opinion or high of opinion of the British, especially after what Admiral Cochrane and some of his troops were doing not only to Washington, but to some of the communities along the shore.
He was notorious for burning.
Nasty man.
We had Major General Robert Ross.
Yes, yes, I understand. Major
General. He was
General.
in Chautauqua, and he was saying that Cockburn was, he liked fire.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Now, whatever happened to Caroline, her daughter, and Grace Wisher, who you mentioned were helping, particularly Grace?
Certainly. Oh, yeah. Well, Caroline married John Purdy. They lived in the house with Mary. Mary passed the house on to her, actually a few months before she died in 1857. Sadly, John Purdy died, leaving Caroline a widow, had no children. Caroline sold the house in 1864, I believe, and unfortunately ended her flag making business because of an accident. She had a terrible accident, could no longer sew, could no longer care for herself, and she ended up in the aged woman's home, which had been started by her mother when Mary was president of the Impartial Female Humane Society.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that, because she was also, besides being a businesswoman, she was also a philanthropist.
A philanthropist, yes. There were quite a lot of the societies around. They were very concerned about war widows who were destitute, women who were widowed or deserted. I know that Dr. Rush was very concerned about things like that. I know that there were quite a few women's groups in Baltimore. One, which was called the Impartial Female Humane Society, of course, was caring for women who were having troubles and such. Mary became its president when she was 50 years old. It was around 1826, yes, and began to collect money to build the Aged Woman's Home. About 13 years later, the Aged Men's Home was built. Now, these were places for the older folks, older destitute folks, I understand, to spend their last days. They were given a room, they had clothing. I cannot offhand remember all the pieces of clothing, but they were given like 1 or 2 chemises, a dress, a work dress, a good dress, a couple of day caps, stockings and such. And this was quite something for the area at the time. It's still in existence.
It's called the Pickersgill Retirement Community?
Yes, it is, the Pickersgill Retirement Community. It is in Towson. And I had the pleasure of playing Mary Pickersgill up there for their Flag Day celebration last year. It was a lot of fun. Wonderful people.
That is good. But in terms of legacy, you know, not only the Star-Spangled Banner, but also the home that's still in existence in some form.
I think Mary decided what we would call passing it on. She had skills, she had education, and was able to translate that into a business to keep her family afloat. They were not destitute. They were not well off, but they were comfortable middle class. Not too many women were able to do that, and I think because of her skills, because of the advantages and the blessings that she received, She wanted to pass it on. She felt it was her duty to do to others or for others.
What about Grace?
Now, Grace Wisher, she was found accidentally. That was so exciting. A gentleman was looking for, or was researching Baltimore indentures. And he simply, as I understand, was going through the papers, you know, just a couple at a time. He'd put his thumb in and he'd grasp them and he'd turn them over. He did that and he noticed a name, Mary Pickersgill. Well, this was something that he did not know about. It was the first time we had met Grace Wisher, who was apprenticed to Mary in December of 1810 to learn the art and mystery of housework and plain sewing. It spelled out exactly what was required of Mary, what was required of Grace, what Grace was to receive at specific times, what she was to receive at the end of her indentured apprenticeship, and whatever has happened to her, I don't know. I would love to meet someone who just found out that they were her descendant. It would be like old home week. Mary herself has no descendants. Mary's brothers and sisters do. So if we can get them together with the descendants of Grace, it would be so neat.
It would. It really would. And now that people have heard you on television,
right.
Maybe someone
Please
will come
look into your family history.
How do you locate your costumes? Or where do you get them?
Well, I love dressing up. I've always loved this period. I did a little research into it with some of the books that I found at Towson University Library, any library actually. But there are several companies on the internet that provide just about anything and everything to reenactors, especially reenactors for 1812. There are several different pattern companies. My first dress came from the Folkwear Company, which was a white muslin, which is a formal dress. This one is from a different company. This is a work dress. There's another one that Ellie Marine gave to me. I made a dress for her, and the pattern just kind of stayed at my house, from La Mode Bagatelle, which is a rather complicated set of patterns, but they're very beautiful, very period. So there are quite a few sutlers, people who provide objects and things, props, clothing, whatever, food, for reenactors.
So you make some of them and some you sort of acquire.
Right, correct.
Okay. What would you recommend in terms of other resources if people wanted to find out more about Mary or that period of time?
Well, the library, most definitely the library. The internet's great, but you have to be careful. Maryland Historic Society has got a lot of information, old newspapers, which will tell you about the fine entertainments that Mrs. Pickersgill and Mrs. Young had at their house one evening. Those are wonderful things. Anytime you can get your hands on a diary that was written by someone at that time would be a very good research item. And
I guess because being a Chautauquan is not just being a performer, you're trying very hard to, I would assume, to bring accuracy to the information you're sharing.
I try to.
all Chautauquans, and there's an element of interpretation in there. What's it like to be a Chautauquan? It's kind of an elite group.
I never thought about that. Well, now that I have actually had a chance to think about it, the history of the Chautauqua, and actually to be a part of it now, it's almost overwhelming. To have people come specifically to listen to me portray Mary Pickersgill is an honor, and it's something that I want to do right so that they don't feel that they've wasted their time. And I also want to share with them my love of history and the unique place that this woman has in our American history itself. And to be allowed to do that is a great honor and a lot of fun. after the butterflies go away.
I bet there are butterflies, especially in the beginning. How do you get your material sort of organized? How do you know what you're going to say?
I did sit down and write a script. Most of the stuff I know about Mary Pickersgill I learned from Ellie. Of course, we have a lot of things written at the Flag House. There are a few things that I've picked up from books, what has happened at that time period and whatnot, and I try to put everything together.
So it's a real process.
Right. I tried to start with a basic timeline. I wanted what day was it?
Yes.
What day is Mary talking to these people about? What has happened during that time? I kind of wanted to set it on the 15th of September, 1814, the day after the British left.
Well, you know, there's just a lot that goes into it. It's not exactly, you know, you don't just come up with it, read a book, and then.
No.
Okay. Thank you so much for being
You're
here.
welcome.
We really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having
hope you
me.
come back. Thank you for joining us. You've been watching Chautauqua, the War of 1812 in Maryland. I'm Angela Rice Beemer. Good night.